and father, flat on a bed, face up over the covers, lips open, eyes shut tight. The impersonal concentration of sleep. The one who wakes, wakes as if called. The thin, windy voice. He's home. Turn. Come lie down. When you lie down, rigid as a boat, your mother rests her skull on your shoulder, puffing sharp, sour breath into your face. Her body keeping near, like the pitcher of tea at mealtime, goes slack again, one knee sliding from atop the other. On another pier, your father farts the fart of love. You are awake, but you close your eyes. Close those eyes. You lie awake, thinking of the man whose bed is crowded with details from the world of life. You put the thought aside. Nothing is like this. Forceful, obvious, true as wood meant for an axe. When it is time to wake, your father will pour you a glass of juice and speak as you drink of what has happened in your time apart. The second poem is called Last Child. Once, our grandfather died. Once, we slept in the living room while the older mourners sank in our beds. Next to me, my sister began to cry, so I cried. It was the year I began to remember. Go to sleep, she scowled. We could have things between us just like that. Things like hate or love or sometimes irony. One brother slept. The other was on the porch, smoking a clove cigarette in plain sight. Fish-like, I breathed silently in my sleeping bag. Eventually, he came inside. Mourning, waiting, sitting in a row, as the light was hitting us at different stages, waking us from one interruption toward another. Last poem I'm going to read is called To My Friends.
Yeah.
Not more than 5 or 10 minutes past midnight, some kids are making their way up the fire escape to the apartment downstairs like little clinking bells. It's raining only in places just below the streetlights and in glittering black pools and veins, and for no good reason, I'm all sympathy tonight, like a cavity, flinching and keeping still. At 20, what is there to fear, you were all saying at dinner last March. I was quiet. Then at what age does fear begin? I'm starting to think of you. What time is it where you are? As I stand by my window, the leaves glossy and placid, the branches, the repentant motion of the brush on my teeth. The fire escape is stirring again, everyone off in the rain, as if you could live like that. Thank you.
Sibongile Sithe grew up in the Mid-Black and the Midwest, and she was never very good at numbers. There was nothing else but words.
I took my project with Leslie Woodard, and I'll be reading from a story called Take Backs. I apologize, I do not speak Arabic. I apologize. I've told the story of Billy Ray Walker to every boy I've ever loved. The first boy I told it to apologized, sincerely too. He apologized like maybe he was Billy Ray. Billy Ray come back 10 years after the fact and on the better side of the 12-step program, trying to lay to rest things that would never really be buried. He apologized and hugged me. Hugged me like maybe I've been walking around my entire life unmarked bandaged goods, just holding that story in, never getting close enough to tell someone, anyone, about that blue-eyed boy from San Antonio. I broke up with that first apologizing boy a week later. When my sister asked why, I told her at some point in the conversation he had cried, and I couldn't tell which of us it was for. It was 1960 in the Indian summer when I first met Billy Ray. Mama and I were 3 months in America and miserable. We had followed her sister out of the desert into South Detroit with less than we wanted, but all that we had so that we could be together. The 7 of us with one bathroom for the first 2 years we were there. Billy Ray had watched me sit alone the first 2 days of first grade before he spoke a single word. "You can't eat that here," he said, standing on the other side of the lunch table, pointing to the container in front of me. My mother had packed leftovers from dinner. Monday, makluba. Tuesday, musakan. sealing each of them into a red Tupperware container. She sent me off that morning with stuff gratefully saying, "You see, Habibti, nothing has to change." I nodded and smiled, even though the leaves had come soaked in brine from California and tasted like the Dead Sea. I looked up at Billy Ray Walker and said, "It's Wawak Talali." He said, "It looks like baby shit." I said, "It's lamb." He said, "And it smells like the ocean." And I thought, I know. And it was like he understood every horrible thing that had ever happened to me, which was, I realized, much more and much less than others have had to bear. I looked at him with a face that held all of that excitement, all that expectation, and was too overwhelmed to speak. He looked at me as though I just drooled on the table, said, "Whatever," and I started to turn away. Fortunately, reality set in quick, and I recognized that the best thing that had happened to me all year was wearing cuffed jeans and walking away at that very moment. But with the screaming children, the scraping chairs, the crinkling of cellophane chip bags, I called to his back. "What am I supposed to eat?" He turned. There must have been something pityingly honest or desperate in my face because Billy Ray Walker sighed, fished $1 and some change out of his pocket, and threw it across the table. He said, "Come on." September 7th, 1960, Asar Salam hits our very first corn dog. Rose it up 20 minutes later, falls in love. It was a bitter winter that year. In December, Billy Ray Walker was in the third month of not speaking to me and moved back to San Antonio without saying goodbye. In January, a girl in my year drowned on the shores of Lake Erie. She'd been skating with her older brother and his friends, and while the latter were lighting up near the bank, she'd been cutting the irrigates and clawing with mittened hands at the edges of the fast refreezing ice. Her brother tried to save her, but everything had sealed up by the time he made it out. She floated just beneath the ice for 2 hours before they'd gotten her out. Preserved like a doll behind glass, her skin blue like black ice. And in February, Samaya was born, which was a surprise because Baba had died 2 years earlier in the hospital in Amman, and Mama hadn't remarried, hadn't even brought anyone home.
Tell by the last names how far away. Next up is Bryce Taylor. Bryce Taylor hails from Dallas, Texas. His favorite fiction writers include Dostoevsky, J.D. Salinger, and Flannery O'Connor. Next year, he'll head to South Bend, Indiana to begin a master's in theological studies at the University of Notre Dame.
Project, I wrote a short story collection called Megachurch, and tonight I'll be reading some excerpts from a story called Break. It's about a college student on winter break who goes to church with his mother. God is just like that with us. This is the pastor's segue from a joke about meat lovers pizza to a passage in 1 Corinthians. The top of the big screen reads, "Growing in the Word. Are you a meat lover?" Mom nods at everything the pastor says. I nod for a different reason. Somehow she sees my eyes closing and gives me an elbow in the ribs. I was 6 when Mom walked me to the front of the church so I could receive Jesus. That was the year after Dad left. A man with a big mustache told me if I repeated after him and really meant the words, I'd go to heaven instead of hell. I tried very hard to mean the words. For years afterward, I'd stay awake in bed worrying about whether I'd meant them enough. I worried about Dad too. Eternity was such a long time to be in hell. I can remember one time when I cried during a sermon. It was in Colorado. The whole junior high youth group went to a camp there in the middle of the summer. It's where I met my first girlfriend, Anna Spencer. If I had to come up with 3 words to get at the essence of Anna Spencer, they would be engaging, beautiful, and bitch. We were together for 24 hours. Then she heard that Wade had an interest in her. Every girl in the youth group had an interest in Wade. Including Anna, it turned out. My revenge took the form of writing something mean about her in a bathroom stall. That night at the worship service, the speaker talked about forgiveness. He asked us all to get on our knees and think